Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Devin Sears, and I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Micah Wood. And today we are talking about the WordPress Media Guide. Specifically, we want to talk about how to upload photos, videos, and galleries when you're working on your WordPress website. And this is because whenever you're building a website, obviously you want to upload your pictures, your videos, or even if you're using licensed photography, you want to make sure that you know how to effectively upload the things you're wanting to utilize in your website and how to optimize that so that you're not going to be slowing your site down. We'll cover all that and more today. But before we jump too far into it, as I mentioned before, we're joined by Micah Wood. He's one of our senior managers and he's on our software engineering team. My name is Devin Sears. I am part of the marketing team, and we are thrilled to have you with us today. Before we jump into the content, we have a couple housekeeping items. Number one, if you can hear us, find the chat box and tell us where you're tuning in from. That gives us a couple different things. One, that lets us know that you can hear our audio. Two, it lets us know that you found where you can drop a chat if you have any questions or want to engage with us today. And three, it lets us know where you're tuning in from. And that's always a lot of fun for us to see how far and where people are joining today's call from. Other questions, if you have them throughout the webinar, next to the chat box, there should be a Q&A tab. And if you have a question, I suggest you put it there. You can put a question in the chat. If it's too long of a question, I might relocate it over to the Q&A tab. It just gives us the ability of having a threaded response. So it's a little bit easier for us to have a back and forth with whoever asks the question and make sure that we're getting them the right information. So if your question disappears from chat, check Q&A. It's likely that I relocated it over to that. The question that we get the most is, will we be sending out a recording of today's webinar? And the answer is yes. And I will say this a couple more times throughout the webinar. We will be sending out a recording of today's webinar. We'll be sending it 24 to 48 hours after we wrap with everything. So keep an eye on the email you use to register for the webinar. If you have any issues, any technical issues that arise throughout the webinar, you can drop that in the chat. Let me know. I'll be keeping an eye on things. Most of the time, if you just leave the webinar and rejoin, that mitigates most of the issues and should get you back on your feet in no time. But always feel free to reach out via chat and we can try to troubleshoot that together. If you're joining from a mobile device, you'll have to unmute the stream, and you can do that by clicking anywhere on the screen, and that should unmute the stream. If you have any questions that you want help with your website, you should see at the top of the chat, there's an area for you to click and get in touch with any of our WordPress website experts. So if you wanted additional assistance, then don't hesitate to click on that. And last but not least, we want these to be educational and engaging. So today we're obviously talking about media and WordPress and how to upload the right things. But if there's a topic you'd like us to see cover in the future, save that for the end. I'll be off camera and off microphone, and I'll be responding to questions in chat throughout the presentation. But if there are any questions at the end, I'll make sure I'll hold a couple to ask Micah if they'll be beneficial for everyone. And if I don't know the answer, then we'll have a small Q&A at the end. So with that, just to set the stage, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Unless it's 5 megabytes and it breaks your site, then it is not worth 1,000 words. It is not worth a broken website. So just to set the stage, we want to make sure that people are familiar with how to upload the right media and do it correctly in a way that is not going to break their website or to slow it down. So from there, Micah, if you want to give yourself a little bit of an introduction and tell us what we'll be covering today.
Yeah. Yeah. WordPress user since 15 plus years ago, maybe 20. I've kind of lost count, but yeah. So today we're covering a lot of interesting things about managing media. So even for people that maybe have done a lot with media, you'll pick up some cool tips and tricks along the way. But yeah, so we're just gonna go through a lot of interesting nuances of managing sites that have lots of media. We will take a look at galleries and some of the kind of visual ways that you can present your media, as well as how you can optimize both from a performance standpoint as well as SEO. And I think in general, by making it look nice and making it fast, it's obviously going to make for a good user experience, which is what we want. And then we'll uh, cover a few things in a demo kind of at the end as well. So, and then of course Q&A. So let's start. If I can get the slide to go, there we go. Um, so step one here is, what is the role of media in a powerful site, right? So we'll start with, what is media? So essentially, there's so many file types. If only you knew how many there really were, you'd be surprised. But the common ones that most of us know, right? JPEGs, PNGs, and then WebP is a newer one. AVIF is also a newer one. And then videos, you've got your MP4s and your YouTubes and Vimeos and Wistias and all the different embeds that you can do. You've got your audio files, and those again come in a number of formats, and then documents, PDFs, Word docs, zip files, all those kinds of things. And then for galleries, those are simply just a combination of images and potentially could be even videos and other things as well. Um, but yeah, so we're going to be talking about all these types of media, and what is good, what is bad, and what we should try to do as we work with it. So, what does a good uh, site look like versus a bad site? This is always a fun one because, clearly on the left, we've got a nice, clean site with beautiful imagery, and, the text and the fonts and everything kind of go along with that as well. And then on the right, we have lingscars.com, which if you go to it today, it's actually not quite that crazy. But if you go to their museum link on their website, it takes you to what it used to look like. It's actually what got them popular, was was the horrible website. Um, but yeah, clearly, like, as a user, that is extremely overwhelming and not very helpful. So uh and of course there's small things that sometimes we don't think about that aren't great for users. So we want to kind of talk a little bit about, you know what's good, what's bad, and go from there. So a few things that definitely help. um So on the left versus the right, this is not quite as extreme as what we just saw, right? But you can see on the left here, we've got like the sidebar, and it's got a bunch of things in it, and then it's got uh, text, just blob of text, and then it's got some old looking images that aren't really like great, and then it's got these weird drop shadows and stuff that we kind of equate with older sites. Um, and it's not horrible, but it's also, if I'm a user going to the site, I'm thinking, hey, this site's not been updated in a while. It's not up to what it should be, right, as far as modern design and those kinds of things. So um, you want to have a site that takes advantage of proper design principles, and then combines that with good media, great photography, great videos, whatever it is that you want to use. It could be everything down to the icons that you use for services or things like that. Um, so a lot of things to think about, but of course we're mainly focused on the media for today, um, and so we're going to try to make the most of that. So how do we get our hands dirty? What are the things we need to know when it comes to the media library? The media library is a section in the WordPress admin. So if you go to the back end of your site and you find that left sidebar, there will be a media link, and you click that, and it'll take you to your media library. So any images that you upload into WordPress will show there, and you'll be able to kind of review them all. Um, excuse me. So there's a number of ways that you can get the media into your site. Most people will click the upload button and upload something or drag it over into the drag and drop section. So you can drag multiple files over. But if you have a lot of files that you need to add, there's some tools and things that we'll show a little bit later, like Media Sync, that will help you to make sure that you have everything properly loaded into WordPress. Um, so once you have your media in the media library, then we want to talk a little bit about uh, file formats, things like that. A lot of people don't know the difference between a JPEG and a PNG and why you might want to use one over the other. Um, PNG, if you need transparency, PNG is the way to go over JPEG. Um, and if you have images with sharp edges, so if you have more of photographic type images, those should be JPEGs. Whereas if you're more like screenshots or uh, logos or things that have sharper edges, those PNG is better at. But now we have WebP, which is kind of a best of both worlds, right? You can get all of those benefits of those two formats out of WebP, and you don't have to use multiple file formats for that. So most sites, in order to be modern with their image file formats, they'll use WebP. So we'll talk a little bit about how you can take your images in whatever the state they may be, convert them to WebP, and then load them that way. Um, and then we have uh, various other file types, right? So if you've got an audio file or a video or a PDF or a Word doc or a number of other file types, a lot of those are all supported out of the box by WordPress, but there are some that are not. SVG is one of those, mainly for security reasons. So, um, but most plugins that allow you to enable SVG will do the what we call sanitization or cleaning up of potential issues with those file types. And generally, if you're creating them and uploading them, they're safe, but you don't want to just be grabbing things off the internet necessarily and uploading them, not knowing that that could be a problem. But like I said, most SVG uploading plugins, I think there's one called Safe SVG, clearly in the name. You know, they're talking about security, so you should be fine to do that. So yeah, so you can enable different file types. File upload types is a plugin that will let you enable and give you a nice visual of just how many file types there are. Um, and then we want to talk a little bit about, what is the best way to organize things from an SEO and a usability standpoint, right? So anytime you upload, let's say, an image into WordPress, you're going to see a few fields, and you can see this little image over here off to the right. Uh, the the fields that you'll have, one will be the title, and these will be used in a number of ways. So titles, if whatever title you put in, typically in WordPress, when that image is surfaced on the front end to the user, if the user hovers their mouse over that image, the title, whatever that is, will show as like a little pop-up text. Um, and then the alt text is essentially used for a couple purposes. One is for SEO and one is for accessibility. So, from an SEO standpoint, you want to make sure that you include keywords. Could be keywords for the page, or in some cases, you may even just be trying to do SEO for the images or things themselves. So, you just want to make sure that you're clear about that. But you also want to make sure that as you put in the text, the alt text, um, you want to make sure that that text is descriptive of the image so that a user who may not be able to see, or in some cases, if something goes wrong with the loading of the actual image, if the image is broken and is not loading, the alt text is what's going to show and that's really how it got its name, right? It's the alternate text if the image won't show. Uh, and so you kind of want to think about it in the sense that if this image, which it is, right, is part of my content, I want to make sure that the description of that content, if the image isn't there, feels like a continuous flow of the content, right? It might feel slightly like a sidebar, but it should be very descriptive. So that, like I said, serves a couple purposes. So you want to spend a little bit of time, make sure that you do that. There are some plugins out there that will do AI alt text and help you with doing that. If you've got, for example, hundreds or even thousands of images and you haven't done that to date, so you can go looking for that. And then the descriptions, they mostly are just used for internal use. Makes it easy for people to make notes and various things internally for those images. Um, so, as far as things you want to think about when you're uploading images, before you upload your image, you want to make sure that you do two things. Number one, you want to make sure that you give the file a good name. So, you want to make sure that generally, don't include spaces, don't use underscores, use dashes instead of spaces or underscores. And then make sure again, does the image include your keyword um, that you want for SEO? Is it descriptive? Is it um, not too short, but also not too long? So think about how you actually name the file. You really only get one chance to do that, and that's before you upload it. And then um, the other thing, which I said there are two things you had to remember, and I'm trying to remember what my second point there was, but well, I'm sure I'll remember and we'll come back to it. But then oh yeah, yeah. If you have, for example, just a ridiculously large image. So I had somebody try to upload a 27,000 pixel image. Now, granted, for most screens, we usually do a 2,500, not a 27,000. So that is a bit extreme. And matter of fact, WordPress didn't even let them upload it. But before you try to upload those files, you should make sure that they're at least reasonably sized for the use that you are you know the use case that you have. um and then once you upload it, um the first thing I would recommend is just go ahead and put in your alt text and make sure again that's nice and descriptive and that it's not you know something like we have here, image whatever number. And so our next section here is talking about file types. So we mentioned JPEG and PNG. That's what most people have uh, saved their images as. And you don't have to convert them to WebP before you upload them. Like I said, there's some plugins that will do that. There's a lot of file types you probably don't want to include. TIFF files is just a image format. It's not really meant for the web. And so think through or even ask ChatGPT, what is what is a reasonable file format for what I'm trying to do? If you're not sure or don't remember. But usually JPEG, PNG, and WebP are kind of what we're shooting for. As far as file size, it can depend on the use case, but in general, you'd want to keep it small. Under 200 kilobytes is a good kind of rule of thumb, but don't feel like that it has to be that small. There are cases where you might have a super high quality image that you're trying to load to show something off, a particular product or a new, landing page for something. So don't feel hemmed in by that, but also don't go too crazy because uh, in general, I try to shoot for entire pages being 1.5 megabytes, maybe two or less. Um, so if you're uploading an image that's 3, 4, 5 megabytes, then you probably can and should optimize it. Likewise, if you're trying to upload a video that's 50 megabytes and that's going to load on somebody's mobile phone, then you want to think about that too. And then we want to think a little bit about organization. From the WordPress standpoint, what happens by default is WordPress will take whatever images you upload on the day that you upload them, or month, I should say, and it creates folders. So there will be a 2025 folder, there'll be an '06 folder for June. And then pretty much everything just kind of goes in there. So if I upload stuff the entire month of June, it's going to go in that folder. And then the next month, we'll get a new folder for July, and it'll go into that. Um, and that works, but you also don't really see that as a user. That's just happening behind the scenes in the actual folder structure. But just because the actual folder structure, the file system itself, operates one way, it doesn't mean we can't organize things a different. And that's the beauty of WordPress and plugins, is that you're able to grab the tools that you need and plug them into your site to make your life easier. So there are plugins like Filebird, which is a free one. They also have a pro version. Wicked Folders also has a free and a pro version. I'm partial myself to Wicked Folders. I think it's great. A little bit more user friendly, does some dynamic folders and things like that. But it gives you the ability to be a little bit more um, deterministic about how you structure your folders. So you want to think about, do I want to group things by social media campaign? If we do a landing page, maybe all the things for that landing page go in, or maybe I want to group by product. Should I group by, product A, product B? So these are all things that are, you know, up to you. You can figure out how you want to structure that, but you should definitely have some sort of reasonable plan, especially if you're going to be uploading lots and lots of images or other file types. So yeah, so use a media organization plugin. Like I said, it's great. It allows you to kind of mimic desktop folders. But then when the plugin, if you decide you don't want to use it and you pull it out, the media library operates as usual and nothing else is really impacted. So it's a great tool, makes your life easier. And especially if you're working with multiple authors on a site, especially if you need to be able to grab specific product images, and you can just do that by pulling up a product folder. That's a great way to go. So thinking through kind of the statistics, I guess, of maybe what a small business owner or blogger might run into with like a 6-month content calendar. So if you're, posting twice a week, you end up with about 50 posts in 6 months. And then, for each post, you might have a couple of images. So you might have that hero image that goes at the top of the post. You'll have a few inline images, maybe a product image here or there, or something like that. So you'll probably have about 2 to 3 images, sometimes even more, depending on how long your pages are and things like that. And then you kind of add all of that up and you end up with 100 to 150 media files. And of course, if you post more often or you use more images or any of the above, then essentially you're going to generate between 3 and maybe 600 images in a year. And, if you operate your site for multiple years, that adds up. And of course, if you start doing something at enterprise level, then then you're talking thousands of images a year. So definitely want to think through those structures and making sure that all the folders and things make sense and that you have a plan around that. So talked a little bit about best practices. So again, rename your files before you upload them. Ideally, size them down if they're crazy big. WordPress does create multiple image sizes, for example. So if you were to upload one that's crazy big, it would essentially scale down to, I think it's 2,500 pixels wide or something like that. And that's the one it'll use as like the gigantic one. And then it'll create a thumbnail size and a medium size and various other sizes. And of course, you can use plugins or other themes might register additional image sizes. So for every image you upload, and this is also part of it too, when you're talking about space on the file system, for every image you upload, you'll probably end up with 5 or more actual images on the file system of various sizes. And the reason WordPress creates those various sizes is because uh, in certain scenarios, like mobile, you don't want to load a ridiculously big image. You want to load something that's reasonable for that size. And we'll see how that works here in a minute. Um, but yeah, so you want to rename it, give it a good alt tag, and then ideally, put it into the appropriate folder or organizational structure. And that will give you a much easier to work with, much more organized media library. So, talking a little bit about galleries. So, when we present images to our users, there's a lot of different ways we can do it. One is a grid. So, I think most of us know what a grid is. You have three across the top, three across the middle, three across the bottom, or whatever number of items, right? Vertically and horizontally. But they're all the same size, right? So you've got a nice grid with a little bit of space in between everything. And that works really well for certain types of things, products, you know, uh, all kinds of things. So think travel blog, you might have a post about a trip that you took, and you'll have a bunch of images that are all related to that trip. And so having a nice little grid or something would be nice. Masonry is a little bit more flexible, right? So let's say all your images are not the same aspect ratio or orientation. So you've got some portrait, some landscape, some, various things going on. Masonry will kind of just make them all magically fit together. So you could have a vertical image next to a horizontal, but then it also puts this image over here because. So that's basically what masonry layout is, and it looks really cool. Uh, and then carousels, right? So having the ability to drop some images and to essentially load those in a carousel format can be a great option as well. So you kind of want to just think through, what is the purpose of my site? How do I want my users to experience the site? And then you can kind of think through what layout makes sense, all those kinds of things. I think a mistake some people do make with galleries is that they try to do too much with it. So having a page where you load 150 images is not great, even if they're lazy loaded. Um, and it's performant. It's a lot. Are users really going to go through all that? Maybe, maybe not. It really depends on what you're doing and what makes sense for your site. So do think about the intent of what you're trying to do, but also the experience of other users. So, and as you build things, I'd recommend find some people, have them go to your site and try to experience and talk through what their experience is like, and that'll help you make some adjustments as you go as well. So we have native gallery functionality in WordPress. So there's a native gallery block. It's real nice. You can basically grab some images from your media library, throw them in, and those will display in a nice format. There's not much you can do in the way of customization, just because it's a block and it's not designed to be the most robust thing in the world. That's what plugins are for. So when we look at plugins like the Envira or Meow Gallery or various other gallery plugins, those are going to be a lot more customizable. They're going to have built-in support for things like Lightbox. If you go with the native gallery block, there's a plugin that you can use that's like Lightbox for Gutenberg gallery images or something like that. So you can kind of retroactively put certain features in there if you want to go streamlined with native WordPress, but you just need one extra feature. But if you have a lot of advanced requirements, then something like these plugins, these more advanced plugins, would be a good way to go. So as you're adding images into galleries, you have some options. You can show captions on those images, right? So that might add some additional context to what people are looking at. You can also link those images off to various sources. So you can link them to the full image, meaning that a user clicks it and it loads the entire tab as an image. And I think it could do that as a separate page, but um, so you can have that load the full image. You can click that, and WordPress by default has what they call attachment pages, which are just pages that literally just feature a specific image or um, so those typically require that a theme has a reasonable plan for presenting images, and they a lot of times will have nice cool ways of doing that on their own attachment page. But if you don't have one of those nice cool themes that does that layout for you, then it may not be a good option. But you can also link off images to whatever URLs you want, right? You can link them to products, you can link them to social media pages, or whatever the case is. Let's see here. So next section is videos, which one of my pet peeves is people who put images in WordPress when they shouldn't, because it's just not great. And there's a number of reasons. So here's a nice little chart. Should I upload it to WordPress? Should I use an embed with a service like YouTube or Vimeo or Wistia or any of these other services? Um, I will tell you 99% of the time, if you're not embedding it from a service like YouTube or Vimeo, um, you are probably making the wrong choice. um, so you don't want to upload very large images because one, you're going to use up all your disk space, and two, you're going to use up all your bandwidth trying to surface all of that stuff from your website. Which means that as users are coming to watch videos, it could impact the the loading of your site itself. Whereas if you embed those, then YouTube takes the load of somebody watching a video, and your website only has to, be the conduit through which that video goes through, but it's not stored on your site. It's not using your bandwidth. It's all happening outside of that. So that's why I say 99% of the time, you want to embed all of your videos instead of uploading them directly to WordPress. But there are a few times when I think it's okay. So let's say you have a small video, maybe like a looping background that you want to put on a cover block with some text over it, and you want to make it a nice, cool header or whatever, and the file's real small, then it's probably okay. Uh, but again, even then, you could still do the same thing with an embed. So why not? Um, So let's take a look at lazy loading. So when you do use services like YouTube, for example, one of the things that happens is it loads the YouTube video player. So when the YouTube video player loads, it does require that the user experience a little bit of a delay while the video player loads up, and all the things that YouTube normally does to track how far people watch into videos, and all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes has a little bit of a performance hit, right? And if the user doesn't even interact with the video, was it worth loading all that? Probably not. So there's plugins like WP YouTube Lite or A3 Lazy Load, or a lot of performance plugins like um, WP Rocket, things like that. They will all have some sort of lazy loading functionality kind of built in, and they also have that works for videos or for embeds. So what that will do is, instead of loading up the YouTube player, for example, by default, it will load an image that, when clicked, and it also has like a play button on it, right? So people know it's a video. So when they click the image, then it loads the loader, and it's all pretty quick because everything else on the site's already loaded, right? So it's a nice way of loading images, or I'm sorry, videos, without putting a lot of, if you had 5, 6 video embeds on your page, then using this approach is nice and clean and very performant. So um, WordPress has cover blocks. A cover block is like a hero block. You can put an image and you can put text on it, and it's basically designed to be kind of that full screen first piece of content that you see. Um, you can do some cool things with those outside of just images and throwing text on it. You can do background videos as well. Um, so those are cool, but again, probably good to have something kind of short and that loops through. And you also want to think through how does that experience work for users, right? If I'm on a mobile device, is your 30 megabyte video that's going to play going to have to load before I can see your content? Not a great idea. So in those cases, you do want to make sure that you have some sort of fallback that's mobile friendly. So replace the video with an image. So there's a lot of options there. But yeah, so if you're, for example, a course creator and you're creating a sales page and you want to list your videos, sample videos there and kind of give people a sneak peek, um, you can use something like the YouTube unlisted or Vimeo private links. And most services have some sort of private link that you can use. And also, a lot of times they, like Vimeo, I believe you can even restrict it to certain domains. So if someone took the same code and put it on a different site, it wouldn't work. So it'd be unique to your site. So there's some good ways of handling videos that you want to show off, but maybe don't want to be public. And then let's take a quick look at the SEO and the optimization and some of those other pieces here, real quick. So there is a service. Now, there's a few things to think about here. So some people like to limit the number of plugins that they have on a site and to use external services when they can. And some people just like everything to be in a plugin on their site. I'm a big fan of having things not always being a plugin on your site, but also if it's something that you do all the time, but you could forget if it's not in a plugin, then you should probably just use a plugin. There is a tinypng.com or tinyjpeg.com. It's basically the same service. They just use different domains. You can go and you can upload, you can just drag and drop images and it will optimize those. And then you can download them and then use those optimized images in your WordPress site. But it's a bit of a process, especially if you're blogging and you're doing stuff, multiple times a week. It gets to be a hassle. So there's some great plugins like Imagify or Short Pixel that will automatically compress and optimize your images the second that you upload them into WordPress. And if you happen to have had a site that's been collecting a bunch of very large images over time, then you can actually go back and do the bulk optimize to impact all of those as well and make them smaller and easier to work with. Um, so the WebP format, like we said, is a kind of a next gen image format. It works with not just images but also videos. So if you're looking at a big MP4 versus maybe a smaller WebP or something like that, you should consider using WebP for that as well. But yeah, so in general, it's designed to be a little more optimized. But so when we do use plugins like Imagify or Short Pixel or some of these other things that can take JPEGs and PNGs and convert them to WebP, um, it's really just a setting that you can check, and those things will be automatically converted to WebP, and you don't have to think too much about it. So um, as you upload images, it will do that conversion from the one file type to another. It will keep your originals in whatever original file type, but it'll also make those WebPs, and um, then you can use the WebPs when you toggle that setting uh, in whatever plugin you choose there. So talking a little bit about responsive images. So one of the things that Google's Lighthouse score or Core Web Vitals, as many know it, uh, a lot of times when you have an image that is bigger than the space that's required to show that image on a site, right? Like if you have, I don't know, text and an image on the right, and that image is really supposed to be like 600 by 600 pixels, but you uploaded a 1200 by 1200 pixel image, then it's twice the size it really needs to be for that space. And so you want to try to optimize it so that the right size image shows for that space and that you're not loading something too big. And source set is kind of a built-in um, tool nowadays that browser understands. And WordPress by default will use whatever image sizes, as I mentioned before. As you upload an image, WordPress creates multiple image sizes. Those image sizes are automatically injected into the source set attribute, which tells the browser, hey, if we're on a screen that's this size, use this size image. If we're on a screen this size, use that size image. And so it's great in terms of making sure the images are appropriately sized for the space that's available. Uh, You may um, want to consider using Short Pixels plugin or something like Cloudflare that can be a little bit more thorough with that, in the sense that if you're on a screen that's somewhere in between two image sizes that WordPress knows about, um, then some of these other services can actually create a perfectly sized image for that. And it really helps with your core web vitals. So just something to think about there. Let's see, video hosting best practices. So I think we kind of covered most of this. Use a service to embed your videos. Don't try to self-host things, especially large things. And then do use the lazy loading and that kind of thing when you can. And then the width and height, you want to make sure set those again. Those are core web vital thing. But I think in most cases, those are typically set by default. So don't have to worry too much about it. Um, and then a quick recap here of the SEO tips. Name your file something that makes sense and uses keywords. Use your alt text that describes your um, image and also uses your keywords. Uh, Use image sitemaps. So if you happen to use something like the Yoast SEO plugin, it will actually create image sitemaps. Um, and so if you particularly want to get traffic not just from your pages but also your images, then that's the way to go. You also want to make sure that you kind of fill in those additional fields as they make sense. Some people don't like the title pop-ups, so they don't put those in. I think that's okay. And again, the description fields are more internal, but they can help with finding things as well. But yeah, in general, if you can optimize for performance and you optimize for SEO, um, you're going to have a great user experience and obviously you'll get more traffic. So, on that note, I'm going to run through a little demo and let me switch screens. Okay, so this is essentially a blank WordPress site. Really, there's no content, there's no media, but I did kind of preload it with a number of plugins, and a lot of them are inactive at the moment. But a lot of the ones that we've talked about are here. I think there's a few that we'll actually talk about a little bit later, but also uh, they're here as well. So the A3 lazy load, for example, is one that will lazy load videos, things like that. Your auto featured image. So if you have a big site and in WordPress, you can upload a featured image. So for example, if I were to come in here and add a new post, um, so we'll say test, um, there's this area here where you can set a featured image, and that, depending on your theme and how your theme uses it, typically what will happen is it'll show as the very first image above or maybe right below the title. And so you can set that. And so this is your media library. Now, typically, so if we pop back over here, this right here is the way that you would go just view your media library. Like I said, this is an empty site. But if we pop over to the post view, when we go to do anything with an image, it gives us the ability to upload things, or we can come over to the other tab over here, media library, and we can select things. We can filter by file types and dates and things like that and find the images that we need. I have, oh yeah, back here, just some images, things, a few bad examples here, like something with a ridiculously long name, that is too long. Something short like man, person, Apple, iPhone, a little more reasonable than man, blue shirt, using laptop, work, typing, keyboard, internal portrait, male, hands, computer, cup, coffee table. Um, and you also don't want to name things Adobe stock, some odd random number, right? So give them a good name, and maybe hard to see for some people, but we do have, if you're on a Mac and you click on an image and you're in this kind of column view, it'll show you how big the image is. And on average, if you were to take a picture with your cell phone, it would be something like 5 to 7 megs, which is way bigger than you'd want an entire web page to be. So clearly, you'd want to size that down and make sure that you optimize it with a plugin so that when you upload that into WordPress, it's not so big. But I'm going to drag that off screen just so I can drag some image over that we can use as a featured image. So if I drag that over, it'll upload it into WordPress. And it might take a second. Should also double check that I'm actually still logged in. Yeah. Okay. There it goes. Okay. So we can set that as featured image, and maybe we'll put some content in there, and then we'll publish that post. So this is, all WordPress core, no plugins, the WordPress 2025 theme. So this is the featured image, shows the title, shows the featured image, shows your post content, which again could have images or other things in it. So uh, again, WordPress core, if you want to put in a gallery, you can do that here. I also have the Meow Gallery plugin installed as well. And another one which can do carousels, which I'll show you. But the gallery plugin, or the gallery block built into WordPress, you can add it. And there's a number of ways that you can add things, whether that's over here and you do gallery. You can see all the gallery options here. You can also see your directory structure or your page structure here and manipulate things. But we'll just go to the media library. And so if we want to create a gallery, so let's say I've got a bunch of like food images here. So if I drag some food images over, then we'll use these. Now you can see as I'm dragging these over, it takes a bit to upload these. Some of them it's because they're big and they need to be optimized, which is happening behind the scenes. Because I have left the Imagify plugin, which does optimization by default. And again, I haven't renamed them, so you'll see them come in with names that, typically you'd want to name it something like cake instead of iStock00, whatever. But yeah, so if they're real big, it will take time to upload. So again, if you're working with a designer and they're creating images for you or something like that, if you can ask for a reasonable size in the first place, it will make uploading a lot faster, which I would recommend. So we'll let the last couple ones pop in here. And once that's done, we'll click create a new gallery down here in the bottom right. All right, so that's all done. These are all checked. If you didn't want one in here, you could uncheck it and recheck it. So you can have all those things in there. We're just going to go with the food items. So we'll get rid of this computer guy. So we'll create, and so it shows you all the images. So you can kind of go through, you can reorder things if you want certain images to be in the beginning or the end. You can add captions here if you'd like, and then you can hit insert gallery. And so this is the kind of WordPress core implementation. It is mobile responsive by default. So if we were to save this and open the actual post, now we can see, we've got a nice layout. Because there is kind of this odd number, it does do this treatment where it does the last one bigger. Um, and then if we were to size the screen down here a little bit as we get to more mobile sizes, you can see it's responsive. The gallery went from 3 to 2. And then if you get small enough, well, no, I guess that's one of the downsides to the core one is it doesn't really go to like a single column view. If you get real small. But then we have the Meow Gallery. So it's a great little plugin. And again, it works very similarly. So you can grab all your images. And of course, you saw that they all checked real quick there. What I just did, in case you weren't aware, is I clicked the first one, I hit Shift, and then clicked the next one, and it picked everything in between. So it's a nice, quick way of selecting. So I can insert the Meow Gallery. And so it has a few options over here. So the different layouts. So the default layout is tiles, which is what we were looking at. So you can see it's kind of cool. It's got this big one, some smaller, and then, various sizes all stacked in there. Masonry, which is going to be just kind of utilize the available space, and it'll adapt for different portrait versus landscape. And then, there's justified. So it does some other interesting things. So a lot of different options. I think the default looks nice, and we'll see from a front end standpoint kind of how that differs from a normal. Um, so you can see the first one here, that big image, and everything above it is the WordPress core, and everything down here is the Meow Gallery. And so as you resize, you can see how it adjusts. And then eventually, when you're small enough, everything's kind of this bigger size, whereas the WordPress core one, it's just going to keep getting smaller. So you do get a little bit better mobile responsiveness from that standpoint. Let's see. I believe. Let's see. Oh, yeah. The other thing I was going to show is, again, this is from a plugin. There's a carousel slider block in the plugin directory that you can download. And this will allow you to essentially create a slider. But it doesn't just have to be images. It could be, you could put an image with text on it, or you could do a lot of those kinds of things. It is a, one click, add an image from the media library, pick an image, hit select, go to the next one, hit the plus sign, go to image, media library, pick your next image, hit select. And then, so it's a little bit of a pain to constantly have to kind of do this number until you get, all of the slides that you want and all the images, and maybe even add your text and um, those kinds of things. So I'll throw one more in there just so we have 5. So it'll be a good example of a slider. I don't even remember what we put in it yet. All right. So if we save that off, now on the back end, it's just a slide back and forth with your scroll, but that's just to make it easier to edit. When you go to the front end, what you actually get is a proper slider. Now, granted, my images are not all the same aspect ratio, and so that makes it just a little bit weird here. So again, if you're using sliders, you'll probably want to think through, what is the aspect ratio going to be for all the images in here. Let's make sure that they all match. That'll go a long way with sliders. But yeah, so it has the slider, and it kind of goes back and forth. you can set it up to loop through and do all those kinds of things. Um, and those are nice and cool. Um, the other piece, as we mentioned, you can do a cover block. So if I do a cover block, I can choose something from the media library or I can upload something. Let's say I want to, um, well, we'll do it upload this way. So I've got it over here. So I've got this nice little video that's um, way too big, 147 megs. So again, don't do that. Uh, but for demonstration purposes, um, it's kind of a cool effect. And we can do a full width view for this. So I can always come in here and do different widths, wide width or full width. I think full width works best. You can come over to your settings, the style settings, and you can scroll to the bottom down here where it says minimum height. You can actually set this to uh, VH, which is viewport height, and change that to 100, which means 100% of the viewport height. And so that will take up the full thing. And then again, you can put whatever you want on here, um, text wise or other blocks. So whatever makes sense to you. Um, but let's take a look at what that would look like on the actual site. Um, and again, it's a little weird because we have a featured image and then we did this. So in this case, it'd probably make better sense to not even have the featured image, but but you can get some really cool effects when you do some background videos. But I would recommend again less than 10 megs, ideally maybe even less than half that, and make sure that you actually maybe keep it to like a 5 second, 10-second looping video or something like that. But outside of that, like I said, uploading it to a service and then embedding from YouTube or something like that is the best way to go. So let's take a little quick look at where we're at. So um, we're not really going to cover this too much, but this auto featured image, like I said, is going to allow you to kind of retroactively set featured images if you have had a site for a while. This carousel slider block is the thing you just saw where we put the carousel into the page. I'm going to list a few honorable mentions. We're not really going to, again, cover this particularly, but enable media replace is great. Let's say you're working with PDFs, right? So you've got PDF, maybe you're I don't know, an orthodontist and you've got some special PDF that people go look at, and maybe you upload it once or you have to update it once a year, but you don't want to change the link to it, because maybe you have all kinds of links through your site, and you just need to update the PDF, right? Well, if you upload a new PDF, then you have to update all the links to that PDF. But enable media replace allows you to essentially upload a file directly in place of another one. So that way you don't have to change any links. You can literally just say, okay, this new version needs to go in place of the old one, and then that will be used from then on. Enviro Gallery is one of those more powerful gallery plugins. We were just witnessing the Meow Gallery plugin, which I think is if you're if you need lots of power, Enviro is great. If you want something clean but also pretty powerful and minimalistic, Meow Gallery is a way to go. Um, this is that file type um, plugin. I'm going to activate it real quick, and I believe that will show in the settings here. So if you go to settings, file upload types, then it'll show you all the different file types that you can enable if you do need to upload various file types. There are so many file types. It takes me, I could probably talk through multiple paragraphs before I get to the bottom of this. But so it's probably a little bit overkill, but if you need to find something like, say, SVG, and you want to enable that, you can just search for it, check the box, and now that's enabled. And then anything, once you hit save, anything that you've enabled will automatically show at the top, so you're not dealing with this crazy list. Um, so yeah, so that is a great plugin if you find that WordPress doesn't out of the box support the file types that you need to work with. Filebird is again, there's a light version, there's a pro version, and it's a great organization tool. I'm partial to Wicked folders, and I actually have pro license, which is great. But if you activate it, like I just did, so we have Wicked Folders Pro active, and we go to the media library, you'll see it's a little bit different. So everything to the right is kind of the same, but then there's this like extra sidebar here. And it does some dynamic folders. So you can say, okay, all the people who uploaded images, these are what was uploaded by admin, all the dates. So it gives you that date based breakdown. So this was uploaded on the 23rd or whatever. Um, the extensions, .jpeg, .mp4, so you can see all those things. And then, of course, if you want to create new folders, you can hit this little plus button. You can say food, right? And so now you have a food folder. And then if you wanted to bulk select, so that's just that bulk select button here. And then you can click on multiple food items, right? So you just want to get the food stuff. And then you could just drag it over to the food folder. And now you have your food section, and then you have your unassigned. And so it just gives you that easy ability to um, structure everything in a way that makes sense to you. Um, and then, as you're uploading new things, you can even say, okay, well, everything I drag over into this area, upload it to that food category. Or you can create a new one and then upload it to, whatever else you've created. So that's a great little plugin. And I'm trying to think, we're getting close to time here, but let's see. Yeah, some other honorable mentions: regenerate thumbnails, adaptive images. Short Pixel has a lot of good stuff. Um, and then, of course, this YouTube Lite thing that we mentioned. So, switch back to slides. So, demo was probably a little bit long, but here's a quick recap. So, automate featured images, again, great for kind of backporting featured images on a site that didn't have them before. Uh, oh yes, there is a media cleaner plugin. Now, granted, I would say to if you don't need it, if things aren't absolutely crazy for you when it comes to media that's uh, not used, but it's in WordPress, then I would say it's probably better just to not worry about it. But Media Cleaner, the whole idea of this plugin is to find images, files, various things that are not used on the site, and then it can delete them. But just keep in mind, just because they're not directly used within the context of WordPress doesn't mean they're not used at all. So just keep that in mind as well. So just a little word of caution. It does have like a test mode you can run it in, so you can just kind of see how many things maybe WordPress isn't actually using, and it can give you an idea of whether you want to proceed with a cleanup. The Yoast SEO plugin is a great tool. It has uh, what's called OG or Open Graph image tags. And it basically allows you to upload, for example, an image that will be associated with any post related to your site. And you can also, I believe it uses things like featured images. It can do that as well for the individual posts that have them. So again, you might want to consider use something like Yoast SEO, make sure that your images have featured images, and some of those things will look a little better when you share them on social. Um, so yeah, so take a look at your media library, take a look at some of these plugins we talked about today, give them a try, uh, think through maybe what the most impactful plugin would be for you and just try that. Don't feel like you need to try everything. So just start nice and small. Um, yeah, just pick And again, these are just some ideas of things you can try, but just pick, based off of where you're at, where your site's at, what does that next step actually look like for you? So yeah, I think that wraps it up. I don't know how much time we have for questions, but
We don't have a ton of time, but that was insanely helpful. Thank you so much for going through that, Micah. There are a few questions that we'll ask. We'll just go over a few minutes. Um, I actually want to start with my own question. Forgive me if you covered it and I missed this, but I feel like when it comes to optimizing a WordPress website, I feel like it's often plugins and themes files, but then images being too large or not optimized. So, how do you kind of find the balance between optimizing your images and like how do you figure out? And maybe that's just a topic for a different time. But how do you figure out which one you look at first, whether optimizing images or optimizing your plugin stack?
um, so I think it comes down to two things from a performance standpoint, right? I will say, out of all the things that you can do to affect the user, um, um, what's the word? Not user performance.
Your
uh,
experience?
the user experience on the front end of the site. So let's say you have a single page. 99% of the time, the number one issue is images not being optimized or not loading in that modern format, the WebP. So that is typically, again, because you could just install a plugin and fix that. Then I would say if you haven't done that today, that is your goal. Like, just do that. Um, if you're looking at performance as a whole on the site and you're finding that just getting the page to load, even if it doesn't have a ton of media, is being slow or something like that, then it's probably time to look at your plugins. Um, if if you have a reasonable number of plugins, 20 to, I don't know, even 50 is not crazy, as long as you're not using a lot of plugins that are ridiculously robust with features you're not using. Um, don't I did have somebody show up at a meetup one time that brought a vertical monitor and had close to 300 plugins installed and
Wow.
had to scroll 3 times through that vertical monitor to get through the admin bar in WordPress. So yeah, don't do that.
That's a lot. Awesome. All right, well, I'm going to advance the slides. This just gives a little bit more, a few more resources if you're looking for assistance. I'll reiterate this again. We will be sending out a copy of the recording to anyone that signed up for the webinar, so we will be sending that out. I do want to just go over one or two audience questions, if that's okay. And I suspect you already covered some of these at some level, so maybe just a little bit of reiteration might be helpful. Um, I'm going to actually kind of paraphrase this one. Someone asked specifically, but it seems like there's a couple native functions within WordPress, but there's also some plugins that do similar tasks. Do you have a suggestion on when you should go to a plugin to get that functionality?
Yes, I highly recommend try to do what you want to do with WordPress core first. If you hit a wall, try a few things out and find a solution that works for you. That'll generally be a plugin. But you should also pay attention to, um, is it a well reviewed plugin? Is it got a lot of downloads? Are other people raving about it at places you talk about WordPress plugins or whatever the case is? Yeah, just make sure it's a good one, but also make sure if there's something that has 50 features but you're only using two, try to find something smaller that just does the two things that you need.
That makes sense. All right. We're actually going to end on this question, and if we didn't get to your question, we'll try to follow up via email or something like that. But as far as file types, I know you spent some time and talked about that, but if you could just reiterate one more time, what do you think is the best file type to use, and are there any file types to avoid? And I know you said there's tons and tons of file types, so you're not going to go through a list, but I'm just trying to think of like the popular ones. Like if I take a picture on my iPhone, it comes in, what is it, like the HEIC format or something like that? Are there any popular formats that you think should be avoided or strived for?
Yeah. Yeah, in general, JPEG and PNG for images, unless, of course, WebP, which is ultimately what we would shoot for. Um, there is a more modern like AVIF, but it's not quite as widely supported. So yeah, WebP for now. WebP does video, but again, you shouldn't really be doing that directly on your site. So mostly just use that for images. Um, you might have Word docs or PDFs that you might link up so people can access them, things like that. If you're selling products, maybe like a plugin where you upload a .zip file, that's something that's not supported out of the box. That's like a file type you have to add support for. But often I think there are some plugins that will handle that. So
Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Micah. Thank you for everyone that joined us and contributed in the chat and asked questions. We really, really appreciate it. And huge shout out to Micah for stopping by and sharing his education and his experience on all of this. So thanks so much.